the things that's going on right now on a larger scale, that's happening, this the impacts that's happening to African Americans, our community. Well, where do you begin to ask?
We're thinking about things that most people you're saying don't even think about. Why aren't you thinking about it?
Why aren't we asking questions?
Why aren't we wondering about our situation? Why aren't we wondering about the stress that we see in the community? Why aren't we asking questions about all those things? Because once we start asking those questions,
then we can begin to heal.
welcome once again to Better Black Health, brought to you by Genetic Sequence Multivitamins, still the only multivitamins made specifically to meet the nutritional needs of African Americans, and also brought to you by the Better Black Health book, which is selling up a storm, Dr. Goler. Selling up a storm on Amazon, and I'm getting nothing but outstanding reviews. I know you bought one. What'd you think?
Man, I think everybody should have this book in their household. I mean, it's the best, most comprehensive book focused on Black health that I've ever seen and have, and I appreciate you taking the time to write it.
Well, thank you. I appreciate it. I mean, we've been through people, some other person said, "Oh, see, it's so easy to read." I was like, "Oh, thank God." So it's not over anybody's head or anything.
No.
They love the pictures and everything's looking good. And so, as you've already heard, we've got our favorite guest, and he just is our favorite guest. He's appeared the most time on Better Black Health, Dr. Goler, sociologist, educator, chairman at Norfolk State, public health scholar. He explores the structural racism, intergenerational stress, and we've talked about boots on the ground and where them fans at. We've talked about a number of things. He was a United States Marine, a professor of sociology and urban affairs. Welcome back, Dr. Tim Goler.
Thank you. Appreciate it. I'm looking forward to our conversation today.
Yeah, so we talk about the intersection of medicine and how how African Americans view medicine, how our community looks at medicine in a bad sort of way, and not really don't want to go to the doctor, don't want to take medicine, not generally, but just that tendency is definitely there. Some of the reasons behind that tendency, Dr. Goler has advanced that intergenerational trauma, things that we've carried forward from what we think is a distant history, but it really is not that distant a history. Childhood trauma, increased stress in the environment. All of those things have made the life we live in these United States pretty dysfunctional. And the statistical data about our life expectancy and our health and the amount of chronic disease we see, the amount of medications we require are all disproportionately higher. And what Dr. Goler has told us that he believes it's our perspective. He believes it's how we look at ourselves and our community is a big part of the problem. Did I summarize that fairly well?
I think you did. I think you summarized it perfectly.
Thank you. So now the latest article you wrote is on our NIA website. The question is the medicine, and like being able to ask a question and know that you have a question about something. Like if you don't even have a question about a situation, you're really lost, right? If you're not wondering why am I in this situation I'm in, whatever the situation is, you need to be asking that type of question. And so when you titled this article, "The Question is the Medicine," what were you thinking about?
Yeah, I mean, I think what I was thinking about was, you can't fix anything, right? I mean, before you can fix anything, you have to see it clearly, right?
Mhm.
And so, I was thinking about, because questions kind of force us to pause, long enough really to kind of see, what's happening to us. You know, answers kind of, as soon as you get an answer, sometimes, you can rush, it becomes defensive, surface level stuff. But a good question really kind of slows down your mind
Mm-hmm.
if you think about it, right?
Right.
It makes people think. A question makes folks reflect.
Mm-hmm.
So, from my experience, especially, us as, in our community, clarity, um, I believe comes from conversations like what we've been doing, right? I
Right.
mean, we've been having these conversations and, conversations, uh, I mean, think about it. I mean, the way we're getting into this is you asking me a question.
Right. 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 That's what
Right?
it's all about. Ask you a question, and that question, right, and that's what starts everything. And
Right.
you would contend that we are not asking enough questions of ourselves, right? I'm asking you a question, but do I ask enough questions to myself?
Right. I mean, so like I say, we live in a time when answers are everywhere. Think about it.
Mm-hmm.
You got Chat GPT, you got AI, you got, you know, but as I shared in this piece, I said, but wisdom is hard to find,
Right. Right.
right? Everybody got to take on everything. Everybody got to post a quick opinion, but as I was saying, yet in our communities, we still are in the same old place. And what I'm saying is maybe what we've lost isn't just community. Maybe we've lost how to ask questions together,
Right.
you know.
So, what's an example like in the past when people did ask questions? Like when we were born I was born in the '60s. You were born probably in the '70s. And what questions were being asked then that we're not asking now?
I mean, I could just think about questions I used to ask myself.
Hmm.
And I appreciate you saying I was born in the '70s. I'm a little further back than what you think. I mean, but, but like I would go, well, why, why do I live here versus there?
Right.
you know, um, why are we taking the bus? Why
Hmm.
are we? I mean, just fundamental questions about like life,
Right.
and I think some of us gotten so caught up in you know materialism that we don't ask just some basic questions about kind of where we are, you
Right.
know. And I think that for me, it kind of starts when you start to kind of slow down and kind of again think and engage.
Isn't that like they what do they talk about, like emotional intelligence, and that the key of it is self-awareness, being aware, how does this make me feel? How does this interaction make me feel? Am I comfortable with it? How does this relationship make me feel? And then go out, start with yourself, and then kind of go outward to say, and then how I feel about this situation impacting this situation.
Well,
And I think,
what thing is hitting me right now is it's like this. One of the things I was thinking about at the time was, we had this government shutdown, and then all the threats was about they're taking food out of people's mouths, and we're not going to have SNAP benefits, and people are not going to have welfare checks, and this, that, and the other. And I remember when we were coming up, although they may, we have welfare and whatnot, but almost every home had a garden,
mhm,
you know, and we were thinking more about self-sustaining ourselves,
right.
right? We had gardens. I mean, I remember the schools in the community, right? The
Mhm.
public schools. We all had
Had
during the had gardens. I had a road that I would go in.
You were right. You were right. And so I think I see what you're saying. And so the question is, and the answer is no, we should not be so dependent on the government that we or us or our families starve if SNAP benefits go away. Is that part of what you're saying, or?
Yeah, yeah. I'm saying that we can, the question in terms of is the medicine is like is to slow down and kind of look at the fact that we have the capacity to do more than what we're doing and not rely so much on uh, um, other folks. We can we can repair what we need to repair. We can fix what we need to fix. We can sustain ourselves if we, like who are we to one another, right?
Right.
And so I'm just of the belief that um, you know we have the answers, uh, but we're not asking, in some sense, the right questions at all,
Right.
right?
And right. And we're thinking, the dependence that we have, that I have, those of us who live check to check because we're materialistic, even being more materialistic than we need to be, right?
Yeah.
Um, then that being broke for a while will stop you from the tendency to live from check to check. You know what I mean? Because if you lose your job, now all of a sudden, you're in a pickle. And I think so. What you're saying is, but we still need, as a community. I mean, like, who thinks that that Jewish people are going to starve if they cut off SNAP benefits?
No, listen, I grew up, and you know how we grew up, right? I mean, from my experience, what growing up in Cleveland, growing up in an all black neighborhood, growing up where we weren't wealthy, but Cleveland taught me, for instance, that to be resilient isn't a theory, right? It's a way of living. Like I grew up watching people make a way out of nothing by pooling our resources,
Right,
right? Whatever we had, we shared food. We we folks raised each other's children, so to speak,
right,
right?
right.
We created our own uh, systems in a way, where when the
Times got hard.
right,
Right,
so for me shaped my understanding of what's possible, of what community of community as something you practice, not something that we kind of declare.
right. Yeah.
So
So we live in the communities we live in now are dramatically different, right? So now we both grew up in the same community, right? Where my friends were my kids' uncles. You know what I'm saying?
exactly.
And then they grew up and found out, oh, so Uncle Paul isn't my uncle. Oh my God. You know what I
Right.
mean? No relation to Uncle Paul. But the community I live in now, there's none of that. There's not very little of it. There's
Mhm.
none of that. There's none of it. You know what I'm saying, right? But the community we live in now is more of a electronic community, the social, on our phone community. So our Facebook community. So perhaps if one of us was starving or push came to shove, we might do a GoFundMe, for so and so's family who's starving because they don't have SNAP benefits or something like that. So we might do that, but it's still different because at some point between when we grew up and when the next generation after us, they did stop the neighbors from interfering in raising. They did stop respecting the teachers to the extent where the teacher was assumed to be right when we were coming up. And
Mhm.
now the teachers are assumed to be wrong and the
Oh, for
child is
sure.
assumed to be right. And so that shift, I mean, where did that come from?
Well, I think a lot of that shift came from concerted efforts outside of our community to like for instance, I mean, technology is a positive, and it has its negative. I was talking to some of my students, um about a week ago, and this was a freshman class of introduction to sociology freshman class, and I asked them. Now these are 17, 18, 19 year olds, right? And I said, "What is community to you?" Right? These are some, and one of them came back and said, "Well, the cell phone, right? To your point, like this is community. Like it's inside this thing here."
Right.
And that just kind of blew me away. Like they said, social media is community. It's the community. It's the new black community,
Right.
right? Social media is the new black community, and I was like, wow. I mean, because when I start class, I thought about it. Like every class, I'm right before class starts. Look across the room, and every single student has his face inside the phone. And I said, well,
Right.
what if I had take the class? I mean, and it's kind of mind-boggling in a sense, right? So there is this huge disconnect between, I think technology has had some impact on the disconnecting of what a community is and what we rely on and how we, I mean, it's hard to say Uncle Paul is in your phone.
Right. 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 But I was thinking as you were talking now that our community could be manipulated in any way whoever is in charge of the medium could want. Right. I mean, if
Oh,
if
right.
we move our community to our cell phones, we've given a lot away.
Oh my goodness. Yes. Goodness gracious. I mean, that's what they call algorithms, right? I
Mhm.
mean, that's what the whole idea around algorithms, I mean, is to be able to manipulate the knowledge, right?
Right.
The knowledge that is put into the world. I have the ability as a person that controls this platform
Right.
from the technical sense to kind of manipulate what you see, manipulate what you hear, manipulate the images. And it becomes this you manipulate the products. For us, it was commercials on TV. Now it's just everywhere, right? So you can, and it's both a positive in some sense, right? Because technology moves fast, but that's also why it's important to kind of slow down and ask the question, because the
Mhm.
question forces a person to kind of take stock, right? Part of the issue is most of us, I would say to you, don't know how to formulate a question.
Right. And why? And why is that?
Because in some sense, I think, it's like, for instance, let's take your profession as a medical doctor. A lot of patients that probably come to see you don't come prepared with questions. They rely on you for the answers. They
Right.
they don't come to you and go, "Well, here's my list of questions I want to ask you about what's going on with me."
Right.
Because they don't even know the context of what's going on with them.
Right. I do see what you're saying. And they don't come to me with a list of questions. And yeah, they right. But I say, hey, how are you doing? And it's like, I'm waiting for you to tell me.
You tell me how I'm doing.
I'm like, I don't know. You at least tell me something. It
You're the
looks
doctor.
okay. Right, 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 right.
So that's the same. I think the same thing applies if you step back and look at society, right? A lot of people don't know what is going on to them in life. So
Mhm.
they're not. So I don't believe a lot of folks know how to formulate the question to ask the question about the context in which they exist.
Right,
Like for instance, the things that's going on right now on a larger scale, that's happening, that's the impacts that's happening to African Americans, our community. Well, where do you begin to ask?
right, right.
You know what I mean? Where does the
Where do you even begin to answer? And we're thinking about things that most people you're saying don't even think about.
no?
And your question is, why aren't you thinking about it?
Why aren't we asking questions?
Right? Why aren't we wondering about our situation? Why aren't we wondering about the stress that we see in the community?
Yes.
Why aren't we asking questions about all those things? Because once we start asking those questions,
Then we can begin to heal. Then we can begin to look for the answers to the questions, right?
mm,
But without the question, you just exist.
right, right, yeah, you just exist, right? And the thing is, I know you've seen it where people have had a conversation such as this, and what happens is each person is just simply waiting for their opportunity to speak. they're they're speaking, and then they're pausing, and the other person's speaking, and they're pausing, the other person's speaking, right? But they're not actually communicating with each other. They're not listening to what the person is saying and then taking it to the next level. They're just taking an opportunity, and that's really what happens in text, right?
Yeah.
And when you're interacting with your phone rather than interacting with a person, you're losing to the ability in real time to communicate, to ask questions, to formulate, like you say, think about the answer, formulate an answer, advance the answer, however it comes out. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah.
And then that's how the conversation grows, isn't it?
Listen, what you're saying is spot on. It's most people listen, and it's what they say. Most people listen to, like you said, answer versus most people listening to understand.
Mm-hmm.
Like I'm waiting on, I'm listening to you so I can just respond back with another answer. But they're not trying to understand what you're trying to say,
Mm-hmm.
right? and and that's where I think a lot of and if you don't know if you don't really, if you're not really understanding, kind of getting to the point of understanding, to your point, it just becomes this exchange of almost nothingness, because you're just words going back and forth, and you're not learning anything. You're not really pushing on anything. The ideas stay where they are. Versus, I hear you, I understand what you're saying, and I can
Yeah.
learn from that.
Does it bother you when you speak to someone and you made a really important point and the person says back to you, "I hear you," and I'll answer first and say, "I hate that." You know what I mean? It's almost like it is so. I like you have said absolutely nothing, and all I did was simply hear you. You know what I mean? That's what I interpret as that answers. I hear you really sort of means that I've wasted my time the last few seconds talking.
Yeah,
Did that mean anything to you? I mean, like versus saying I understand where you're coming from. I
yeah,
agree, or I hear you. Sort of is like the lowest form of answer I think I can get from someone. Is
yeah.
that
I hear you. No, it's a it's a deflection. That's all it is. It's deflecting. It's not. There's no conversation in that. It's
right?
I hear you. It's like blowing you off. It's
Right,
not
right. I mean, but I'm sure a lot of people don't mean that, but that's what I hear. I mean, that's my thinking when I hear that
no. I
is that
think
I
I
hear
think
you, and I'm wondering, are they making a thoughtful decision to say, I hear you, and now I'm going to talk, versus interesting point, or I don't agree, or I mean, there's not enough of that going on, right?
well. I think you're being kind. I think that people, uh, for the most part, don't want to go. I mean, if someone's interested in having a thoughtful conversation, or interested in what your thoughts are and what you're actually saying,
Hmm.
uh, I agree with you. I don't think they just say, "I hear you."
Hmm.
I think they affirm, uh, what you're saying by almost repeating what you said, so you can understand. So
Right.
so you know that you understand. You
Yeah.
understand that they heard you,
Right.
right?
Right.
But you know, many people, including myself, in particular, black men, us,
Right.
I don't think there's no book on knowing how to communicate,
No.
and so sometimes it's it may be done unintentionally because we don't really know how to communicate, and sometimes I believe, and I really do, I believe that um, to be able to be an effective communicator also takes a level of humility and maturity,
Hmm.
because communicating is not always easy.
Right.
It's not the easiest thing to do. You know what I mean? Because sometimes you're going to hear things that you don't want to hear.
Right. 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 But is that why? I mean, to an extent, I remember, when my wife would talk to me, and I'd be sitting there, and she said, "Well, what are you thinking about?" And my answer is invariably nothing,
Right.
and her answer is invariably, "Well, I know you're thinking about something." And I would sincerely, from my heart, say I really wasn't. I mean, sometimes don't you sit sometimes in the days where you're not thinking about something, or is that just, or was I thinking about something and just did not want to talk to her about it? Or you see what I'm saying? Is that the communication? Do we have to communicate everything we're thinking about when someone asks?
I think that, you know, um, we all need space to um, think. And I think very rarely are we blank in our minds,
Hmm.
right? I mean, we're always thinking. I mean, I know my mind goes a million miles. Share it all the time, so I do think that we think, but I do think that we want to, we want to be able to um, create the right, and want, you don't want to have the right, create spaces where you can almost, I don't want to use this word, where people experience kind of interdependency. You know what I mean? To be able to share in your thoughts, when folks can come together and build something together, and but in the same breath, you do need to have reflective time. You do need to have time to be able to. That's why, to be able to ask a question is so important, because it helps you slow up in a world that is moving so fast that you don't have time to think. I mean, I mean, how do you formulate a question when you scrolling TikTok all day?
Right, right, right.
You understand what I'm saying? I think to when your wife asks, "What are you thinking?" I think it's okay to say, nothing right now.
Even though you would contend there are thoughts going
There
on,
are thoughts going through your mind.
you just don't you just don't want to talk about them.
I don't want to talk about it right now.
Well, but listen, so back to the question being the medicine. So you would contend we need to, in order to figure out, like, what's the point of this half hour we just spent, we need to ask more questions first of ourselves, right? And of our situation, right? Why am I married? Why am I single? Why can't I find someone I love? Why are my kids doing this? Why do I keep having to get new jobs? Whatever that
Yeah,
question, you need to
yeah,
ask yourself those questions and
yeah,
somehow have
yeah,
a neutral, or kind of some
yeah.
kind of objective perspective, or at least
Right,
attempt to get an objective
right,
perspective on their life, right?
right. Yeah, and and so, and I asked that question when I and it's both individual and community, because I talk about, I can't talk about just as individuals and not as a whole. So I think questions force us to kind of confront both, like the gaps and the possibilities, right? So like when I think about us as a community, like, question like, what do we owe one another, right? I
Mm-hmm.
mean, who's being left behind and why? I mean, think about that. I mean, we got major class issues in our community. Like, and who's being left behind and why? Questions like, what strengths do we already have, and and what are that's being overlooked?
Right.
What are the skills and wisdoms sitting unused in our neighborhoods?
Right. Right.
Do we have some fundamental questions that we just don't ask? What do our children need that we're not providing?
Right. 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 And we're not even asking those questions.
No, I mean, and this doesn't have to be about the entire. I mean, but just as a father, you can ask questions about yourself and your own children,
Right. Right.
right? And even when I step back and think about it as a people, like, I go, who are we becoming?
Right. Right.
You
Right.
know, who are we becoming? You would think that 2025, where we are right now, about to be 2026 in a minute,
Right.
you would think that we were, as a people, much more advanced than, much more. I mean, but I know we're going through some struggles right now, but I am concerned about where we are as a group.
Right.
And so if we're not asking questions about that, and we're not publicly asking questions about where we are as a people, then where are these questions, and how are we going to get to any answers about where we need to be in the future?
Right. Right. Where are we? How can we move forward?
I don't hear politicians asking questions about our situation. I don't
Mm-mm.
hear. Where are the questions that are being posed that are going to help us grow and be healthy as a people? And I know you have children. I have children. I mean, we need to be asking questions about better Black health.
Right. Right. Right.
Right.
Right, and next generations. And so, the thing is that the last interview before this one is the one with Dr. Constance Hilliard. So she's a historian and talks about the genetics related to and that our strength as African Americans is actually our genes. I mean that we have the most diverse genes, as we talked about. If there's going to be a cure for some widespread problem, it's going to be in our genes.
That's right.
It's not going to be in white people's genes or Asian Americans' genes. It's going to be in African genes because that's the widest diversity. And so when you think about us as 13% of the U.S. population, despite our position and our shortened life expectancy and everything, we are still doing outstandingly well in these United States. I mean, compared to the 1930s, we've already had 13% of the population. We've had a president, a vice president,
That's right.
I mean, Speaker of the House. I mean, we are included, but what we are not doing is including enough community. We're not sticking together as a community the way, again, the Jewish community is. They stick together and they can still talk about each other within that community, but it's still community first. And I think we could learn something from their approach to community, that it's really community first, then everyone else, but then and we can still talk about each other, kind of within our community the way they do.
Yeah, but that is also to um, what your last guest, what she talked about, and it is true. From our elders taught us really what the Jewish community does currently, which is, for us, our strength is our collective. I mean,
Hmm.
that we are. That's what we're missing. That's why they want us to not read about who we are as a people, because our real strength as Black people is communal.
Mm-hmm.
We are a communal people. Our strength lies in our collective. Our elders knew that our power lies in the many, not the few, right? That's where, that's the power in us. And also that discipline is protection. They understood that commitment, routine, and boundaries keep us grounded. So yeah, I mean, um, we that's why it's so important for us to have these conversations, to ask these questions, and so that the folks that listen to this can remember that we have what we need.
Right. We have it's like Dorothy and Oz. The solutions to the vast majority of our problems lie within our community. The solution does not lie outside of our community, does it?
No, no. I mean, and we have to. I think that we have to think that care, meaning taking care of one another as we've always have, right? Sharing food from we used to share food from the garden. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Uh, we used to collect books, and just share books, and we used to check on our neighbors, and all this stuff is woven into life, and that we can't forget these things, right? It's not a concept; it's something that we do.
Right, right, right. Well, listen, on that note, Tim, I mean, I want to thank you again for joining us. I know you're doing 50 million things.
No,
Holiday season's upon us.
yes,
Wish you happy holidays
thank
and
you.
rest and relaxation, take some time to think about what questions, because why? Because the questions is actually the medicine. The medicine is in the questions. Ask some questions of yourself,
That's right.
people who are listening right now. And thanks again for joining us with Better Black Health. Thanks a lot, Dr. Goler.
Thank you.
Take care. None of the statements that I have made have been evaluated by the Food and Drug Administration. Genetic sequence multivitamins are not intended to treat, cure, or prevent any diseases. Furthermore, none of my statements should be construed as dispensing medical advice or making claims regarding the cure or prevention of diseases. You should consult your own licensed healthcare provider before starting any supplement, diet change, or exercise program, especially if you're pregnant or have pre-existing injuries or medical conditions. Remember, having a doctor is always your best option.